Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 260, I chat with Smith Freeman, the Director of Product Management at SVS, about designing affordable yet high-performance speakers. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded June 18th, 2015, episode 260, Designing Speakers for SVS. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Warby Parker Eyewear. Get boutique-quality, classically crafted eyewear, including sunglasses, at revolutionary prices. For a free home try-on of 5 stylish frames of your choice, plus free 3-day shipping, go to warbyparker.com/HTG. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week, my guest geek is Smith Freeman, Director of Product Management at SVS, a very well-known speaker company, and we're going to learn all about how he designs speakers for the company. Hey, Smith, welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Good, thanks. How about yourself?
Doing very well.
Great. Those who are tuned in live at live.twit.tv and logged into the chat room from there or from irc.twit.tv can post questions for Smith as we go, and I will pass along as many as I can. So first I have to ask you, totally unrelated to speakers or anything else.
Okay.
Your first name, Smith?
My first name is Smith, and it's a family name. It was a last name for a long time, and then my father's like Smith Freeman, though I guess he's a junior. He hates that. I've got a bunch of middle names. It's a lot of last names, basically. Yeah. But Smith is definitely my first name. Okay,
very good. So I just had to clear that up because I don't think
problem.
Don't think I'd ever met anyone with that particular first name.
I don't know if I recommend it for people's children because they'll just spend the rest of their lives explaining it, but you know what? It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
It's all good.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into the business you're in, which is designing speakers. What is your background in acoustics and speaker design?
So, like a lot of people, I was always interested in music and art, and I studied a little bit of physics in high school, and that really kind of captured me a bit. Both my parents are scientists and engineers, and when I was a teenager or something, I started building my first home stereo, and that really kind of started to engage me a little bit. Listening to my music in my own room, in my own environment. Naturally, I took everything apart like right away, and
of course,
that kind of sent me in the path, and I ended up going to Dickinson College, a small liberal arts school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and I did my bachelor's in physics there. Minored in music and art, and it was there that I kind of realized that I wanted to get into the audio industry. I had this kind of idea of this crazy esoteric loudspeaker designer guy, but and even in college, I did an experiment. My senior research project with a buddy of mine was on electrostatic loudspeakers. And so we spent a year building computer simulations and designing this speaker. And we actually built this 1x3 foot panel. And it totally worked. It was cool.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, super inefficient. Sounded terrible. Had incredibly regular harmonic distortion. It was, from an academic standpoint, it was totally fascinating, but maybe not a great loudspeaker.
Yeah, but, you weren't going to build it to sell, in other words.
No, it was to build one to see if we could build one. But it was cool. And so from there, I went on to do a 2-year master's at the Peabody Conservatory, which is a satellite of Hopkins in Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
And I really went there to find the gateway to get into the audio industry. Because just a bachelor's in physics is great, but it's not a shoe. It doesn't make you a shoe-in to get in into the industry.
Isn't Peabody a more of an art school or music?
Yeah, it's a music conservatory first, but out of the conservatory, it's one of the best conservatories in the world. It's like right up there with Juilliard and Berkeley and all those guys. But out of the conservatory grew a recording arts department, and out of that grew also like an acoustics and an audio design department. Actually, one of my professors at the time was Matt Lyons, who I believe, I forget his exact title. It's like VP of products or something for Polk and Deaf Tech. And so he got me my first internship with a loudspeaker company that was based there in Maryland, and really helped me get into the industry. And so that was where I really kind of got my feet wet. And a lot of my classmates, they went on to places like Bose and RPG diffusers and all the different parts of the industry. Some were recording engineers, the whole thing. But from there, I moved to here, Southern California, land of no water. And
yeah, afraid so, man.
Right,
we're all suffering that.
Yeah, and I worked with this design and manufacturing firm for about 6 years, where we worked with manufacturers and a whole slew of big mainstream brands. And I spent a lot of time working in manufacturing and designing and just learning every inch of the industry. And that was a hugely educational period. I mean, that's where I really learned everything. And I basically got burned out and a little bit disillusioned. I don't know if disillusion is the right word, but I wasn't really crazy about what I was seeing happen. And so I left to do a consulting thing. And then Gary Yakubian, who's the CEO of SVS, he found me, and we connected and just totally had like a mind meld. And we had kind of saw the same vision for what an audio brand could do and could be for consumers. And the thing that disillusioned me a little bit was that I worked on these really cool, really great products, and I was like, this is super cool. And then it would just do nothing in the industry because it was too expensive.
Because it was too expensive.
Yeah, it was very often just too expensive, or it wasn't being driven the right way to people, and so no one was experiencing it. And I'm like, well, that's what? How cool is that to make something really fun and no one uses it? It's a total disappointment. And then I would work on other stuff that would start off as these really great designs, and then they would just go on the chopping block, and it's just you just whittling away every bit of it to we gotta hit this margin, we gotta hit this price. Sorry, just get rid of everything that makes this thing wonderful. And like at the same thing, you just like all the romance, it just goes away. Yeah. So that's where Gary found me, and we connected, and I saw here's this brand that can make use of my background in acoustics and loudspeaker design, and we can make some really awesome products.
It sounds like you and I actually have very similar backgrounds. I also got my bachelor's degree in physics, and my thesis was on the acoustics of woodwind instruments.
Oh, so totally fascinating.
I was building, I was actually making bamboo flutes at the time. This was in the 70s. So, and I wanted to understand, the acoustics of what I was making and how to make them better. And so that's what I applied my physics to. And so, we followed very similar paths, although I ended up down the writing path and you went down the design path. And so here we are.
Here we are. You can write and I can't.
Right, exactly. So give us an idea of what Gary, who was the CEO of SVS and who found you and offered you the opportunity that you thought was really great. What is SVS doing differently? What did he say to you that made you think that things would be different at SVS as compared to the place where you were or other speaker companies?
Sure. Well, SVS is basically known as this internet direct brand, but we're more than that. And so it's that we're really this brand that's very customer facing. And it probably sounds kind of trite and common, like I'm sure every brand says that, but as a designer, as an engineer that was basically left the industry and came back to SVS because here's this opportunity to actually be that. It's a little bit idealistic, but it's, here we want to make products that are performance and customer first, right? And so, not that like industrial design takes a back seat. These things gotta look good too.
Yeah.
But here is this opportunity for SVS does this thing a little bit differently, where they can make products that really get people excited and they get engaged by the source material that of their choosing. And we've built the whole company around this idea. So even our customer service, like Ed Mullen, who I'm sure you've talked to, and everybody in AVS knows, he's fantastic. He's this really honest, really great guy that really genuinely wants to help people. And our whole customer service is all here in the States and works in real time with a lot of people. That's around this idea that we want to really address the customer's needs. And a lot of our products are even designed with that intent. It's like, and like the home audition, we'll ship the product to you for free, give you 45 days to work it into your home, work it into your system with your material, your dog walking around, the whole thing. and if you're genuinely still not satisfied by it, we'll take it back and give all your money. I mean, what other industry can do that? You can't do that. You can't go to your local car dealership and buy a car and drive it off the lot for a month and a half and then bring it back and be like, hey, can I get the next one up? Right? You can't do that at your sandwich place.
That. Yeah, at a sandwich place, right? Have a sandwich and go, oh, well, I don't really like this one. Can I get another one?
Right, yeah.
There are, you mentioned car dealerships, and I just saw a commercial for CarMax, which actually lets you have 5 days, which is, even that is unheard of, really.
It's hugely progressive, right?
Hugely, yeah, exactly. And you're giving people a month and a half, which I think is so important because you can't go to a store really and audition speakers. I mean, let's even put aside big box stores, right, like Costco or Best Buy. But if you need a reasonable acoustical environment, a room in which to hear it, and even if a store offers you that, it's not your room, and so the speakers are going to sound different in each room. So you listen to it in the store, and you go, yeah, that sounds great. I'll take them home, and you put them in your room, and you go, oh man, that sounds totally different. So this is really something. I think
it's cool though, and another part of it is that we're not just an internet direct brand, right? So internationally we have a ton of dealers and retailers, and then and just recently we've got the SB2000 and the SB13 Ultra in Magnolia Design Centers. And I don't know if you've been to a Magnolia Design Center, but it's like a regular Magnolia, but it's on steroids. And these people are just as passionate about audio as we are. But yeah, to your point, it's, we just wanted to make every dimension of the brand kind of address what a customer's needs are. So, whether you want to get us on the phone or on chat or email through customer service, or if you want to bring the product home and audition it, or, hey, you want to see it, talk to some retailer, we're working on that too. But yeah, well, it's totally we want to make the customers happy, right?
Yeah, it's sort of a new paradigm, and if you make them happy, as you say, it'll they'll come back,
right? And the coolest part about that for me as an engineer is it takes the reins off a little bit. So, when I'm designing something, it's totally with the intent that this is gonna shock and awe every person that unboxes it, right? If someone unboxes this subwoofer and integrates it into their home theater or their stereo, and if they're not just totally overwhelmed with joy and just like a big stupid grin on their face, then like that's a failure on my part.
You haven't done your job.
Right. Yeah. So my job is really, like with the primes, like there was definitely sleepless nights where I'm like, I think these things are as good, and I just, I want them to be as good because people are going to bring them into their homes. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, that brings up another question that I wanted to ask you about, and that is SVS obviously is known for relatively low-cost speakers compared to many of those other ones out there, and yet pretty high performance, surprisingly high for the money. But assuming that you have a limited development and manufacturing budget, there must be places where you have to say, I'm going to put my money, what budget I have, into this part of it, and I'm going to have to sort of skate over this part of it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
How do you go about determining what's the important things to spend the money on?
I mean, if it's for a home playback chain, I usually tell people that it's the number one thing is always going to be the speakers, right? Speakers are the playback system, so that's going to be the number one deciding factor of how a playback system performs.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, as you work your way down the playback chain, it's going to be your amplification and your room. A lot of people
I would say the room might even
the room's arguably
might even be
number
the next.
two.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is that's actually a really easy one and a really inexpensive one potentially to work on. And that could literally just be, hey, I'm gonna pull my seat off the back wall a little bit, or I'm gonna take these bookshelf speakers, I'm gonna toe them in a little bit. Just these things are free, right? These are easy things to do if you have the leeway to play with them. So I mean, usually I tell people to if you're going to invest in something, invest in the speakers first, and then hold off on the $1,000 per foot power cord for a little
cables
bit.
Right. Well, no, but I understand all that, and that makes a lot of sense. But my question really is, you as a designer.
Oh, okay.
You're given the charge of creating a new speaker.
Right.
And
okay.
and you're saying, and they are telling you, Gary is telling you, we want it to, hit this price point. You mentioned that earlier about having to hit a price point.
Right.
So that means you can't spend unlimited money on development and manufacturing. So you have to choose where you're going to spend your money as a designer, as a developer of the product. And so my question to you is, how do you decide what's the most important thing to invest in and invest that limited budget in, and where can you let things slide a little bit?
Yeah, to me, it totally starts with the drivers, right? It has to start with the woofer, the mid-range, and the tweeters. Like when we designed the Prime series, we already had these great drivers in the Ultra series. The Ultras are fantastic performers. They sound great. And they were this benchmark. And so, Gary and I are like saying, okay, the Prime series has to be as much as the Ultra series, but it's got to be half the cost. So, exactly to your point, how do you do that? So the Prime series, the drivers are literally based off of what we did for the Ultra series. And so we took the Ultra tweeter, and we took the Ultra mid-range and woofers, and we said, what are the most critical, most important parts and dimensions and properties of these drivers, and what of those can we carry over to the Prime series? And so we looked at the motor, the suspension, the spider, the surround, the voice coil, former, the shape of the cone, how they all stack up together. And we said, okay, these are the things that make this driver really great. And so, we basically said we have to put all of our energy here to make great drivers, and then build a really good cabinet around them. If you put on God's gift of binding posts on a dog, you
still have a dog.
You still got a dog. So yeah, I mean, there were basically decisions we had to make along the way to say, okay, well, what's really critical for the performance of this product. Let's say you look at the Ultra 6.5-inch woofer. It's built on this really nice cast aluminum basket, and cast aluminum is probably one of the best materials you could build a woofer basket frame out of, because it's inert, it's non-resonant, it's not going to change, it's heat resistant, the whole thing. And so what we did for the Primes that was super cool for me as a designer and as an engineer for the product is say, okay, we're going to make all new cast baskets. We're going to do cast ABS plastic. And on top of that, we're going to add glass fiber fill to make that cast ABS plastic even more inert, even stronger, even better heat resistance. And it's going to be a fraction of the cost of the cast aluminum.
Wow, cool. Very innovative, it seems to me.
Yeah. And what's really great about that is now we can use all the same soft parts, right? The same spider, the same surround, We use the same dust cap, and then we went to a polypropylene cone instead of a glass fiber, but the same architecture of that light and rigid cone. And then we could use the same motor, same voice coil, and so we could even get them all mating together in the same way and capture, the majority of that ultra woofer performance for the Prime series. And so we literally did that for the whole product line.
Wow. So the driver design is the same, more or less, but you have substituted more expensive, less expensive materials from the more expensive materials in the Ultra series, while keeping, say for example, the frame more, continuing to be rigid with impregnated ABS, and the cone material is a different material. And so on, but so reducing the cost that way while keeping the design more or less the same.
Right. Yeah. And so the idea then is that you're going to build a speaker around great drivers. If you start with like a really lousy driver, your whole time's developing the system, the whole speaker as a whole to work together. You're just putting out fires. You're just trying to fix distortion and problems and this harmonic and this thing's vibrating. You don't want to do that. You want to start from a really good foundation. So the drivers are the foundation, and then you make a really nice, inert, well-braced cabinet around those drivers, and you can from there you've got a great playing field to put in a really good, elegant crossover design to make these drivers blend well together and make this kind of coherent signal.
Titus in the chat room is asking, will a speaker with metallized diaphragm sound crisper? He says like gold foil or such. I'm not quite sure what he means by that, but you mentioned, I think in the Ultras, what's the cone material? I forgot.
Oh, it's a glass fiber composite.
A glass fiber. Okay. What do you think about? The question is, what do you think about metal cones? Because some companies do that. They do metal cones.
Oh yeah, and a metal cone for like a woofer or a mid-range can sound great. The property of the material plays a part, but probably I would say more important is the architecture of the shape. Like if you were to look at the cross section of a cone, is it straight or does it curve as it comes in? Things like that can play probably as big or bigger than of an impact on the sound than just the material itself. But typically, like if you're thinking of like a resonant property to a metallized cone on like a woofer, ideally you want to design that so that those resonances that would actually be negative are outside of the passband, or
and the passband being the range of frequencies that driver is intended to reproduce.
That's right. So I mean, that's why you can see some brands will use a metallized cone for a subwoofer. If there's some 4 kilohertz resonance in that cone, it shouldn't be coming out.
Who cares? It doesn't matter because the subwoofer will never reproduce anywhere near 4 kilohertz.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Charlie X is asking, do you make your own drivers in-house?
We do build a lot of the drivers on our side in like the sampling process, and actually a lot of like the Ultra 13 woofer, we built that for a long time in Ohio, but all the drivers are our own design. They're all totally unique.
But probably a lot of what you and almost everybody else makes is actually constructed in China, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be at this point.
Yeah, and it would be cool
to be, but it'd be very expensive to do it here.
Yeah, there's ways to do it here, but I've seen a lot of really exotic product built in China with great expertise, and we have a partner there that we work with that builds just incredible product, and along with ours, and have the ability to make really custom drivers. Sometimes when you see a really inexpensive product, it's just using this off-the-shelf part. It's like the Toyota Camry of cars. It's just like, okay, well, here's all the regular parts, and we're just going to put them all together and call it done. And that's one way to do it. But if you want to get a really exciting product and premium performance, then you need to really look at each part and address the qualities of each part.
Mm-hmm. The gem doctor in the chat room, who's really a gem doctor, cool. asks a pertinent question. Didn't Sony experiment with sputtered diamond-coated drivers a couple of decades back? I don't know if Sony did, but I do know that I think it's B&W.
Yeah, B&W does like some sort of diamond coating on their tweeter. I'm not sure how they do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think now that I think about it, they might actually grow diamond material in a laboratory setting such that it becomes the tweeter surface, the diaphragm itself. I don't know what the advantage to that would be. I mean, it's obviously super strong, super stiff. I don't know what the resonant properties might be. I'll have to get somebody from B&W on the show to talk about that.
Yeah.
F-Loop in the chat room is asking, what's the doohickey in front of the tweeter and what is it for? F-Loop, you're going to have to be a little more specific about what doohickey you mean.
I know exactly what he's talking about.
Okay.
Or I know what they're talking about.
Okay, go for it.
So on both the Prime and the Ultra series, if you look at the tweeter, there's a metal mesh that basically goes over the entire dome and protects the dome. But underneath that, there's like a little toroidal, little donut-shaped piece that sits behind the mesh in front of the actual tweeter dome. And so that's a diffuser ring. That's actually one of those things where we looked at what we did right in the Ultra series, and we said, you know what, we need to do this in the Prime series. So this allows both the Primes and the Ultras to play really well with each other in the same system because they're using some of these key properties. But yeah, that's a diffuser ring, and that's basically to correct and improve upon some of the resonant properties of that tweeter.
Got it. We now have a picture up for those of you who are watching the video.
There it is. Not all tweeters need this, right? Some tweeters, because of the architecture of the dome or other properties around the faceplate, that kind of thing, they don't have anything in front of it. Others just have different shapes, and there's a whole part of tweeter design that's basically trying to find the right shape of a diffuser that sits in front of the dome, so you can get a really good on-axis and off-axis tweeter response.
Well, that is an important thing because, of course, high frequencies are more directional than low.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
But you want them to spread out into the room much the same way that the low frequencies do in order to allow people to hear more or less the same thing, whether they're on axis or somewhat off axis. So having a diffuser.
There was a ton of time spent to get that diffuser to be right. I mean, not just like the shape of it, but even just how far close or far away from the dome it needs to be to get the right response.
What about cabinet design? Let's talk about that for a minute. In particular, I'm thinking about some cabinets, speaker designers design cabinets with very curved surfaces on the front to minimize diffraction, which is the sound coming from the driver kind of reflecting off the baffle, the front part of the speaker, and distorting things, and also internal standing waves. If you have a rectilinear box, you can build up standing waves at certain frequencies, and that can cause problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so on the Prime series, what we did for the radiation off the front baffles, that they have that chamfer that kind of runs from top to bottom. It's kind of like a cut, but then it tapers as it goes. And so you want to kind of minimize the number of parallel surfaces that are all around that can kind of build up like a stack up of resonances. And that was also a design quality from the Ultra series that we wanted to carry over. So things like that can be very important. Making sure that the tweeter, there you go. You can see it's kind of wide up top, and then it tapers down as it goes down, and that's on. Oh yeah. The whole product line has that. And that was something that we wanted to really bring over from the Ultra series, where the Ultra series even takes that even further. There's even little chamfers on the bases of the cabinet, and if you look at the Ultra Tower, the actual sidewalls are splayed out And that's to address the exact comment of the standing wave. And then on top of that, the back is angled. So it is a heavily contoured cabinet to address all of those things.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's very cool. You've obviously put a ton of thought into all of this, and we will continue to talk about all of this and much more. But for this moment, I would like to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Warby Parker, who is bringing big changes to the eyewear industry with glasses that are made from the same high-quality materials sold in boutique shops. They're available at revolutionary prices. Holy smokes. And they're styled after classic vintage frames. Now, being a glasses wearer myself, and Smith, you are too, so you know this too. Other manufacturers keep their prices so high. I mean, it's easy to spend $300, $400, $500 and up on glasses, but now you have a better option for your eyewear needs with no overpriced choices. Or bland choices for that matter. And, Warby Parker, in fact, was recently selected as the #1 most innovative company for 2015 by Fast Company. I mean, that's pretty serious cred right there. They make high-quality, stylish prescription glasses and sunglasses, and the glasses start at just $95, including prescription lenses. I don't know about you, Smith, but the last time I went to shop for glasses, they weren't $95.
No, definitely not. Each lens, maybe.
Each lens, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Progressive lenses are now available starting at $295, and they use this really cool thing called a digital freeform lens, which is the most advanced progressive technology. Digital application provides a larger field of vision, so the design is more precise than traditional models of progressives. I might have to give this a try. I've gone away from progressives because they kind of give me a headache, but this might be a solution. And all of Warby Parker's glasses include anti-reflective and anti-glare coating, a hard case, and a cleaning cloth. Now, you might be wondering if you can try Warby Parker's stylish glasses for free, and the answer, of course, is yes, with Warby Parker's free home try-on program. Just go to warbyparker.com/HTG, choose 5 pairs of glasses, and Warby sends them to you so you can try them on. I want you to check this out. I actually did this, and here is the box it comes in. And when you open up the box, you have 5 slots and with 5 frames in them. And the frames have, non-prescription lenses in them. They're just fake lenses there. But you get them in your home, you try them on, you ask your partner, you ask your friends what they all think, and you can make a choice at your leisure. Now, of the 5, I'm going to show you the ones that I chose, and I'm going to take my headphones off for a second here because I can't change glasses otherwise. But when I put these on, my wife immediately said, "Oh yeah, those are the ones." So I think I'm going to order these, and because I got to tell you, the first time I got titanium frames, which many of Warby's are, they just felt so good. They also have a lot of the plastic ABS, I don't know what you'd call it, kinds of frames. Those aren't my style. I'm more of a wireframe kind of guy. So anyway, these are looking pretty nice, I think. And so these are going to be my next pair of glasses. and it was so easy to try them on. I can't really wear them right now because I need to be able to see the Art Real lenses. But the fact that they came in the mail within, I think, like 5 days of when I ordered them, and I could try them all on, I could see what I thought. My wife and my friends could give their opinion. It's really very cool. And they even include a prepaid shipping label for easy return, because you're going to want to return these lenses, these frames, so that they can actually put real lenses with your prescription. All you have to do is choose the frames you want, enter your prescription details if needed, which I can't see why they wouldn't be, and Warby Parker takes care of the rest. Even better, for every pair of glasses you purchase, Warby Parker sends a pair to someone in need. They partner with nonprofit organizations like Vision Spring. So I think that is super cool.
That's cool.
So yeah, it is, isn't it? So give Warby Parker a try for a stylish new pair of prescription glasses or sunglasses at warbyparker.com/HTG. Get the free home try-on and get free 3-day shipping on your final frame purchase. That's warbyparker.com/HTG. And we thank Warby Parker very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Can't wait to get my new glasses, actually. I think they're going to look really cool. Okay, so I'm talking with Smith Freeman, the Director of Product Management, I think is your official title at SVS, right?
Yep.
But to be honest, really, you're the chief speaker designer. And
I'm the speaker guy.
So you're the speaker guy, and we're talking speakers here. We also want to talk about subwoofers. I certainly do, because subwoofers are a really important part of many audio systems at home. There are those in the audiophile community who really would prefer to have true full-range speakers and not have to worry about integrating a subwoofer. But that's pretty hard to do, isn't it? To build a speaker that can actually go down to 20 hertz or something like that and up to 20,000 or more.
Yep.
That's hard to do and ends up being really expensive.
It can be really expensive. It can be really hard to get that kind of dynamic range and to get that kind of frequency response that you would need out of just a single like tower speaker. So yeah, right. Integrating a sub into a 2-channel system can be just a total joy, right? I mean, that can really fill it in where maybe the speakers fall short.
But you have to make it blend well with, as the main speakers roll off, the subwoofers rolling up, rolling on, shall we say, in a way that makes it very seamless and smooth. And that can be a challenge depending on the room.
Yeah, absolutely, and depending on the speaker, if you've got some little 2.5-inch full range little satellite speaker, that thing's not going to play even remotely close or to low enough frequency that you could get a subwoofer to blend with that.
Right, and that's the problem with so many of these sat sub systems, as they're called, satellite subwoofer, with the tiny little satellite speakers and then the subwoofer. It's like, well, okay, but there's this weird area in the middle. Giant hole in the frequency response. Exactly.
Yep.
So SVS concentrates a lot on subwoofers as well. And I have to say, just for everybody's information, I think the PC2000 is the latest sub from SVS.
That's right.
Mark Henninger just reviewed it on AVS Forum, so it's right there on the homepage. He was really taken by it. He thought it sounded great.
He wrote a glowing review. It was great. It was and it's actually there's a really fun conversation in the thread going on after it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's so great about it.
It's cool.
Yeah, a lot of passion there. Exactly so. So John just put up the cutaway of that particular speaker, and it's kind of interesting, or subwoofer, I should say, kind of interesting because it's a big, tall cylinder.
That's right.
It's not something that you would necessarily think of. Most subwoofers are either big square boxes,
right, or big rectangular boxes,
or big rectangular boxes. Yeah, exactly. So here we have a big, tall cylinder. What led you to that, and what's different about it from a big rectilinear box?
So, SVS has been making cylinder subs for a number of years now, and when I came on, it was time to do the PC2000, and so we kind of the whole purpose of the cylinder form factor is that you want that ported box performance, but the volume's got to go somewhere, right? If you take our PB2000 and you want to get that same performance, same amp, same woofer, same cabinet volume, same port tuning, but you want it in a smaller footprint, the volume's got to go somewhere. So we send the volume upwards, and the cylinder was a really easy shape to work with. And so the PC2000 is kind of a new approach to the design of the cylinders. Our older cylinders have a kind of like a pedestal that it sits on, and the cylinder sits above that, and then the ports are up firing. And what we did on the PC2000, which was really cool, was we made this really nice, huge 4-inch flare that kind of marries to the curvature of the cylinder, and then bends up inside the cabinet and runs up on the inside. And so in that picture, you can see it's actually flared on both the outside and the inside, and runs through the cabinet bracing. But that's the same. It's down to, I don't remember how many square millimeters or cubic millimeters. It's like this almost exact same volume and cabinet volume and port tuning as a PB2000.
Now, I was going to ask you about this. Hang on a second.
Sure.
Just had to turn off my phone machine. When I look at that picture and I see the port, right, which is, I guess, at the back of the cylinder,
That's right.
you can call it a back, but it extends way up into the body of the cylinder. And I'm wondering, what is the purpose of, why do you have to have that big long tube?
So the way a port works, there's a thing called a Helmholtz resonator, right? And we can all go make one, right? Just go get a Coke bottle or a wine bottle or whatever, and if you blow on the top of it, you basically have a little slug of air that is vibrating back and forth, and depending on the volume that little channel is married to, dictates a pitch or a frequency. And so ported boxes and the diameter of the port and the length of the port are all associated together and tuned specifically to kind of maximize the low frequency response. So you have to imagine that long port, the volume inside of it is a giant blob slug of air, and at particular frequencies, it's oscillating back and forth. And so that's what's helping to augment and lower the frequency response of the system.
I'd like to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your model numbering convention really gives people an idea of what is going on in each of these models. For example, PC is ported cylindrical, right?
Yeah, ported cylinder, yep.
So PB would be ported box, or rectilinear box. And then you have an SB, which is sealed box.
Yep, totally.
I don't know if you have a sealed cylinder or not.
No sealed cylinders. No SCs.
So my question to you is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of cylinders versus boxes? And you already sort of talked about that. And then ported versus sealed.
Well, in the ported cylinder versus ported box, the biggest driving factor is kind of like what I was saying, is it's the footprint. It's how much space is the actual box taking up. So, if you have a smaller room, like I have a relatively small office, I was using this PC2000 prototype I have here, and it takes up it's almost the same footprint as an SB1000, which is our smallest subwoofer. So you can get all of the performance in that smaller footprint. Now, obviously, it's a different industrial design, which is okay for some people and it's not okay for other people. So there's a little bit of a user preference there. But we really designed the cylinders, the ported cylinders, to be as close to almost exactly the same acoustic performance as the ported boxes. As for sealed versus ported, Ed actually wrote this really great article about the whole sealed versus ported thing. But typically a lot of people will gravitate towards a sealed box for the kind of the timbre of the system, which is a little bit different. So people call it it's tighter, or it's more musical and things like that. And really you're talking about things like the transient response and the group delay, which is a little bit different than what you'd get with a ported box. Though I will say that in a well-tuned system, and like a well-tuned subwoofer, and if someone takes the time to put the system together, like a home theater or a 2-channel system with a subwoofer, and you put them well together, you can make a ported box perform incredibly well for music. I listen to music in this room all the time, and very often I'm going back and forth between a sealed and a ported box. And the PC2000 was kind of a gateway product for me, and thinking I've always been more of a sealed box kind of guy, but there's something to these ported systems that can really bring music alive, not just for movies. Am
I correct that a sealed box will get lower bass extension, all other things being equal, but with less efficiency?
Yeah, that's basically right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
basically,
a ported box will definitely be your kind of go-to for, if you're just looking for just absolute low frequency and absolute max SPL.
Okay. Ported box will get lower.
Yeah, because you can basically utilize that cabinet volume and that port tuning to extend the low frequency response of the woofer and the system as a whole.
Muchacho in the chat room is asking, the PC2000 is a down-firing subwoofer, and many are. The actual active drivers shooting down towards the floor. And he's asking, downfire okay on carpet?
Yeah, actually, the one I'm running here is on a carpet. And so here's another example of why I actually have a lot more fun working for SVS and other brands. So working on the PC2000, we were looking at all these different kinds of designs for making the feet on the cylinder. And then, we just came to the point where it's like, you know what? Like, we've got these great isolation feet, the sound path isolation feet, which are, by all accounts, like a really great isolation system for any product. It's like, we should just include these in the product. And they give enough rise off of a carpet that, the woofer basically has enough air to breathe, right? Because if the woofer is too close to like a floor, it might even touch on like large excursions, or you're going to get some sort of compression artifacts or chuffing of the air trying to escape out the sides in all directions. But those isolation feet are significant enough, yeah. So you can see that in that PC, that's either a PC12 Plus or PC13 Ultra, I'm not sure. There's that space that allows for the airflow, for the acoustic dimension of the driver excursion to radiate out the sides. And so on the PC2000, we use the isolation feet to accomplish that.
There must be a difference, though, in sound between putting it on a carpet versus putting it on a hardwood floor, for example.
Probably not.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a difference, it would probably be really hard to discern, especially because you're talking about really low frequency.
True enough. Yeah.
Maybe if you had like a wood floor that was like falling apart and there were wood chips flying everywhere, you'd hear something.
Yeah,
they are kind of built like a jackhammer, right? So.
Right. Charlie X is making an interesting point in the chat room. No reflecting surfaces in a cylinder. Getting back to the cylinder versus box, and we were talking earlier about standing waves.
Yeah.
And that was a question I was going to ask you, actually. Obviously, that's a problem in a box. Not really in a subwoofer box, because the wavelengths are like...
Yeah, the wavelength is gigantic.
Gigantic, many more times than what the box is for the most part. But I wonder about the resonant characteristics of a cylinder versus a box.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably, probably the ideal shape would be like some sort of like egg shape. The egg is like this incredibly strong structure. You can put one in your hand. If you just squeeze evenly, you can't crush it. So the cylinder is like that, so that there's no, the forces would be evenly distributed around the whole cylinder. But and then it's not really the same as a standing wave. But you also want to take into account airflow inside of a cabinet. So when you look at the bracing of a lot of speakers, you want to try and make the bracing fairly large. You want to make the openings inside the brace fairly large, so you have good airflow. If in that cutaway picture of the PC2000, you can see that the port flare is literally inches, quite a few inches away from the top of the cabinet. If that was too close, you would actually get a whole bunch of additional, even though it's flared to reduce air turbulence, you would get a bunch of additional airflow artifacts and noise if that port was too close to the top of the cabinet.
I saw another question here. I'm gonna look for it while I ask you one of my other questions, which is what were some of the challenges that you met when developing the Prime series, and the PC 2000? What did you run into that you had to kind of say, how are we going to get around that?
Well, in the Prime series, we kind of set this target of that this thing's got to be as much of the ultra performance but half the price. And so you have to ask yourself, what are the things that you're going to take away, and what are the things that you have to keep, and so, like on the Ultra series, we have these really beautiful machined aluminum trim rings that cover all the woofer baskets and flanges. And so, in Prime series, we just couldn't have that. Now it's mostly cosmetic, but it does have an acoustic impact. And so, one of my challenges was when doing the voicing of the system, we have to take into account that, okay, now the physical alignment of the tweeter and the woofer is different than it was in like an Ultra bookshelf. And so that's going to adjust the crossover to get the right blend and coherence between the woofer and the tweeter. And so, there was Gary and I spent a lot of time in this calibrated listening room and in our calibrated listening room and the measurement chambers, going back and forth doing the tuning and voicing for the Prime series. And another challenge on the Prime series was the 3.5-way design for the Prime Tower. So that architecture, that layout for the crossover was for a time on the fence. We didn't feel like we had to do it, but it'd be kind of cool, but only if it's going to make it the best product it can be. There's no sense to just throw something into a product if it's not going to make it discernibly better. And so there was a time when that 3.5-way for the Prime Tower wasn't going to be a part of it. And there was a couple sleepless nights.
Well, sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought there.
There were just a couple of long nights where making sure that yes, we can do this 3.5-way, and yes, it is better. And yes, and then taking it, how far can we take it to make it the best it can be? And, by the end of it, Gary and I are looking at each other just like, wow, like it was really good.
You nailed it.
Yeah, we nailed it. And it was, that was a very cool moment to, because we were doing lots of A/B testing also. The Prime series are going right up against the Ultra series and some other competition. And so, it's gotta be as good as it can be. We're not going to put something out unless it's just, really the best performance that we can eke out of it.
Mm-hmm. Here, I found that question. It's from Web0780. Why do powered subwoofers have a left and right input when amps have a single mono output? And this relates to the question of sometimes a subwoofer, and I don't know about the PC2000 or other SVS subs, but you'll have a left and right input. You'll have speaker level inputs, line level inputs, and an LFE mono input from the LFE output on an AVR or something like that. But the main question here from Web0780 is, why have a left and right input when you've only got one driver, basically?
Yeah, it's if you look at the back of a subwoofer amplifier, all those input-output connections are basically trying to solve problems, right? They're trying to answer questions. And so it's the question of what is your system. So, most people that use a subwoofer, they're just using just a very standard AV receiver or a surround processor, and there's just a single LFE, RCA, or XLR cable that they're going to be using to connect that subwoofer, and suddenly all the questions are answered. But if you're in some other kind of system, maybe a 2-channel rig, or you're using some exotic or esoteric or really old goofy electronics, maybe the best way to make sure that you're getting all of the signal is using both full range left and right channels. Because there was a generation of Beatles recordings where the stereo sound was a hard pan left and right. And so if you were integrating a subwoofer and playing that music and you only used one channel, you would literally not have a contribution from the other half of the mix. All those input outputs are just to kind of answer different questions of what is your connectivity. It's like
basically work with different kinds of systems. Not everybody's going to have an LFE output.
That's right. And like on the Ultra and the Plus subwoofers, our flagship subs, they have both unbalanced RCA input and output, and they have XLR balanced input and output. And it's because maybe you're in a more like a pro audio kind of system or higher end gear, and you want to use balanced cables instead of unbalanced. It's just options to answer different kind of questions.
Titus in the chat room is asking, what about trumpet mutes in the speaker ports? And I think what he really means are plugs.
Yep.
A lot of companies provide these foam plugs that you can plug up the port with.
Yep.
What's your feeling on that, and why do it or not?
Typically, that would be a solution if you had some sort of like room mode problem or some sort of like bass bloom or something like that. So basically what you're doing is by sealing the port, you're literally augmenting the low frequency performance of the system, of the cabinet and the woofer together. And like on the PB13 Ultra, we've got those 3 big 3.5-inch ports. And we've designed that one specifically so that you can run them all wide open. You can run them with just one plugged, or you can run them with them all plugged. And there's even like a DSP EQ that you can set in according to which mode you're setting. And that's really to augment the low frequency response. Sometimes your ability to place a subwoofer in different parts of the room is limited, and maybe the location that a speaker or a subwoofer has to live isn't ideal from a room acoustic standpoint. So plugging the port might actually make for a better system response and a better listening experience.
Okay. Lawn Dog is asking a related question. What is your opinion on using more than one subwoofer in a system?
As many subs as you can do, man.
Well, aside from it being good for SVS.
Oh no, I don't mean. Yeah.
What are the advantages?
Too. No, more subs are always better. No, really, there's scientific research on this, and there's a guy at RPG Diffusers that did a study on number of subwoofers for what the goal is, which is flat, even bass response throughout your whole room. So you've got a living room, you've got multiple places to sit. You've got one sub, you put it in one place, and you walk around, and the bass is great here, but it's terrible there, and it's loud, and there's none, and that kind of thing. And so by adding more subwoofers to a room, to a space, you can actually more accurately address each room mode, which are dependent upon the room dimensions. They're completely related to the length, width, and height of your room.
Right.
And so from a practical standpoint, multiple subwoofers is actually really beneficial to handling room modes and getting that flat, even bass response. If you go to a movie theater, here you've got a huge room, and so you've got very pronounced room modes, and most good movie theaters have multiple subwoofers. Absolutely.
Titus and Charlie X are making a couple of interesting comments on a question. Titus says, I think the best sound to tune the bass would be to play Inagata-Davida drum solo. And Charlie X is asking, what music or movies does SVS use for evaluation?
Oh, it's a great question. And actually, this is a great question for really anybody. Everybody. I recommend this to people all the time. You should make a collection of short 20, 30-second clips of different kinds of music for doing A/B testing and listening, and the goal is that this is stuff that intimately well, so that you can listen for certain acoustic cues and artifacts and whether or not it's doing something right or doing something wrong. But warning, don't pick your favorite songs because you will learn to hate these songs. I cannot listen to So
you made
Gary
this mistake. I think you talked from experience, eh?
I've definitely done this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had very visceral reactions to hearing some of my test tracks just come on casually, where I'm like, no, stop.
Change the channel.
No, it's there's a Miles Davis track that Gary introduced me to called From Where My Prince Shall Come. I think that's the name of it.
Someday My Prince Shall Come.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and it's a great track, but it has this really articulate, beautiful upright bass that comes in, and it is a perfect example of testing a speaker or a subwoofer for how clear, how pronounced, and how musical or natural can make an upright bass sound. Now, part of what an upright bass is also the higher harmonic timbral effects that will come through your speaker. But you really want a great performance from your subwoofer, and that's a great track for that one. There is a Bob Dylan track, Man in a Long Black Coat, that we use a lot, and it is.
You're kind of sick of it, I bet.
That song has basically never been a listenable song for me.
Yeah.
But it is a fantastic demo track. It has the full range of the dynamic spectrum. So it has loud, it has quiet, it has high frequency, it has low frequency. It has a really great recording of a male vocal voice. Norah Jones is always a reference material from the first album because it's a great reference for female vocal voice. My recommendation is just pick songs that you don't cherish,
Right.
but pick songs that kind of hit the full spectrum of the things that you would want to maybe listen for. So loud.
So maybe you don't cherish it, but you're familiar with it.
Absolutely, yeah. And the more you listen to it, you'll become even more intimately familiar with it. And so people talk about how perception of when listening to a speaker changes. Like if you're trying to do like a truly blind A/B demo, the speaker needs to change the exact position. You need to not know which one's where, and it's got to be totally seamless. And that's basically almost impossible.
Harman has done it in their multi-channel listening room.
And I think
they spent hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on that place.
Right. Yeah. So this is like an unrealistic requirement for normal people. But for everybody else that wants to bring some speakers into their home and do an A/B test, you have to go back and forth quite a few times to kind of like acclimate to the listening experience and what you're listening for, and having that breadth and material, and being able to take having a notepad, take notes down, and then you do a bunch of listening, you go back and forth on different types of stuff, and then go back to the beginning stuff, listen to it again, because maybe your perception has changed and you need to listen to it again. And it requires a degree of honesty that is that's hard. It's hard to be honest with what you're hearing sometimes.
Well, certainly your perception changes. I mean, we're humans, and we're kind of pesky in that regard. We're not constant.
Yep.
So my last question to you is, I imagine that you listen to test tones and also to demo tracks, and keeping in mind that your perception is going to change over time.
Yep.
What percentage is spent on each of those? And I also want to ask for you for a couple comments on you mentioned a calibrated listening room, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then maybe SVS also has some anechoic chambers to do the measurements
that's right.
in.
Yeah, we would go back and forth between the listening room and the anechoic chamber to, so like in voicing the Prime series, we're making fine-tune adjustments to like the moving mass of the woofers, and later on to the crossovers and all these things. And we're going through all these test tracks on each speaker, making these fine-tune adjustments to the crossover network. And then we're going back into the anechoic chamber to remeasure and make sure that, okay, we fixed this thing, but now we've created this other problem. And so, it's a back and forth to find the right balance.
Almost like a game of whack-a-mole.
Totally. It's here. No, it's over here. No, it's over here again.
Right, exactly. Web7764 asked a question about test tracks and distinguishing between songs or tracks that have bass in them versus movie soundtracks with a true LFE track.
Yeah.
You listen to those too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
On your subwoofers.
Yep, absolutely. It's the part of the problem is that we lose perception as we go further into the extremes of the frequency spectrum. So, if you're trying to distinguish between an LFE track and just like a really well recorded full range music track, I don't know if you could actually do that, but by all means, your test material can still be a movie, right?
Sure.
Actually, there's a great track for testing LFE channels on the first Matrix movie. So in the scene where the helicopter's like crashing into the building, and you're getting this kind of like ripple in the glass, and you get this explosion. This is a really great test track, because what happens is it's testing some of the dynamic range, and then also the speed and capability of a subwoofer through an LFE track. And so what's happening is the camera actually cuts from the explosion to away from the explosion and back to the explosion. So if you were to look at the signal, it's like you've got this ramp up and this base frequency as the explosion starting, and then it drops out, and then it jumps right back up to full. And so that's a very hard test for a lot of subwoofers to do well.
Wow, cool.
Yeah,
that's great. I'm glad to know that, because I certainly use the Matrix in my video reviews, but now I'll know to use that particular sequence right there in like a subwoofer review or a speaker system review. That's very cool. Very cool.
You know, the important thing with all these test tracks is that you kind of hone in on particular. It's like an acoustic object that you're trying to evaluate, right? So music is making this 3D acoustic space, and there's a guy over there, and he drops his drumstick, and it's like, but it's like this really subtle thing, and like I should be able to pick it out. Okay, I didn't pick it out, so there's something's wrong. So there's things like that, or you're listening for the color of the voice. It's like, she's too forward, she's too far back. She doesn't sound, she sounds too nasally. These things can happen in the voicing process if you don't get the crossover and the drivers right.
And then there's the issue. One last point here: the issue about how the recording was made, because I take your point about the string bass, the acoustic bass, very seriously, because you often hear when you go to an audiophile show or something like that, a lot of people play tracks with stand-up bass, and they sound very different from one another because of how they were recorded. Oh yeah, totally. So picking the right bass, the right track with string bass or upright bass on it, will be very important, because it may not have those high harmonics as nice as you might want them, or anything like that. So keeping, and how was it recorded? We don't know. Right. And some of the better recordings, especially a lot of like jazz and classical music, they'll actually say recorded here. We use this preamp. We use these these mics, and we down to the cables and stuff like that. Some people will get that nuanced in it, and it's proof's in the pudding, right? If you're using it, and it's the whole playback chain, right? If you start with great performers and go to great mics and go to a great recording system, and then put it on into good electronics and good speakers and into your great room, then you should get to that's like a total magical moment where your ears are convinced of something different from the rest of your senses. I've experienced this, and it's like it's the total like driving force for me. And I think there's so many people out there that could experience this, right? And audio nirvana. It's a totally magical moment. Well, I think that's a wonderful place to leave it. We've come to the end of a fabulous conversation. I want to thank you so much for being here and enlightening us about your philosophies on speaker design and SVS speakers. Thanks so much. Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. Oh, yeah. It's great to have you here, and we'll have you on again, I'm sure. Okay, cool. So you can learn a lot more about SVS at svsound.com, and that's where you can find out all about what Smith does there at SVS. You can find me at avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott and at avsforum. And you can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here at twit.tv/htg and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twithometheatergeeks. Next week, I will be in New York attending CE Week, the Consumer Electronics Industry's mid-year gathering, and I will be conducting in-booth interviews with the exhibitors there, which will get sent back to Twit Central and assembled into this podcast for next Thursday. So I do hope you will tune in for that, because should run across some very interesting stuff. Lots of great things happening at CE Week, and I will be talking about that during the show, during these interviews, and also on The Tech Guy when I'm on with Leo. So I do hope you will join me for all of that. Until then, geek out.